Good afternoon and welcome to this week's edition of the People Progressing podcast. And today I have McFadden on, and I had her brother Judah on, who's an actor out in California. Now, Taylor is starting her own company. She's a director, writer, producer, co-founder of the production company I Play Different, whose mission really is to center female-driven storytelling in both the documentary and narrative spaces. Very, very fascinating what you're doing. And we're going to get into that in a minute, Taylor. But I always start this out by asking my guests on my podcast, where did you grow up? What did you like to do as a kid? Some of the things that influenced you to kind of doing what you're doing now.
Totally. We moved to Colorado from Michigan when I was about 9 years old. So I would say my really formative years were in Colorado, and we were homeschooled. So we spent a lot of time at home. And I'm the oldest of six kids. So
Oh, okay.
we had a lot of time on our hands. My younger sister Alaska and we just lived in these imaginary worlds. We would literally be like, let's live in 1950s, blah, blah, blah. Or we'd be like we read a lot of history and we would like delve into the history and the culture. We'd read books and cook the food and make costumes. We had giant bins that our grandmother had made of costumes. So it's not, a coincidence that half my siblings are actors because we were writing plays and putting them on for the neighborhood. We were always writing some sort of theatrical thing, a story, and really just creating these worlds because we had so much time on our hands and we didn't have TV. And
Oh,
I'll tell
wow.
you what, I used to hate my parents for not letting us have TV, and I later had to thank them because we didn't waste all of our time in front of these screens. We just had to fill that time and we were allowed to be bored. And I believe that developed the creativity so much. And I remember when I was like 13 or something, and I had like an existential crisis. I was like, what do you do when you stop playing pretend? Like, how do you live your life? It must be so boring. And the answer is you become a filmmaker and then you just create worlds and tell stories for the rest of your life.
That's awesome. I want to go back to it. I always pick things out here, but you didn't have a TV. Why did they do that?
My parents, they really wanted us to not be influenced by the parts of culture they didn't like. We grew up really religious, and for some of it was maybe a little extreme, but I think they felt that TV was kind of like a mind suck, and that it was a waste of brain space. And this was before, I mean, we didn't have cell phones, we didn't have kids are on devices so much more now, but I think just instinctually, they really wanted to, like flourish our creativity. So, yeah, it definitely, when all your friends were talking about like the Simpsons episode that came out that week, and you had no idea what was going on, and you would like sneak to the neighbors to like watch TV. But I do think, it was a huge gift. We read a lot of books. I mean, I remember one summer, my sister and I, and my dad was like, I'll buy you a loom if you read 150 books this summer. And we read 150 books.
Wow, wow.
So yeah, it was a choice. But I think it was an interesting one. It definitely shaped my upbringing for sure.
Now, did you always want to be a director or a writer or producer of movies and films or how did that come about in your ways? Because you didn't, you said you wrote plays and stuff and did that stuff as a kid and all those kind of things. Is that what kind of led you into this role that you're in now?
It's interesting. In retrospect, it's not surprising that this is the path I took because being the oldest of six siblings or five siblings, um, you tend to be directing all the time. You're always like orchestrating and being like, okay, you go here, you go there. I mean, there is not a photo of me growing up where I'm not holding one of my little siblings and being like, all right, we're doing this, we're doing that. And so, you become a little bossy. But I was always an artist. I mean, I won a coloring contest at 4 years old, like and my parents were both creative. All of us were really creative. So I was a painter. I was really into that for a long time. I was doing all kinds of things. I didn't realize that it was film until a little later in life. Although I will say we did watch a lot of old cinema. So when the TV was allowed to come out, it wasn't, the modern day shows that kids are watching. It was like Casablanca or, Gone with the Wind. So I was watching like, real cinema. And that's what I would see at my grandmother's house too. So, you know, we were exposed to just like really incredible storytelling at a very, very young age. So I always had this respect and this like, appreciation for old cinema. Got really into to watching movies like that when, in my 20s and stuff. And then I can tell you the exact moment actually when I realized that I wanted to be a filmmaker. I had been doing all of these art shows. I was helping run a magazine in Denver, and I was the fashion director. So we would pair designers with storytellers, with a musician, and we would do these live art events. So like one of the ones we did was at the Denver Art Museum when it first opened, and it was a live show of a chess game. And the designer designed these clothes, and it was this dramatic piece where, the queen sacrifices herself at the end, and live music was playing. I mean, this was like experiential art before people were really doing experiential art. And I remember working on that project for like a year, and I was like, this is a lot of work for something that's over in like 2 seconds,
Yeah, yeah,
and at that time, there's a theater that is no longer there. Rest in peace, Esquire downtown.
yeah.
But I saw two movies in one week, and it was Lost in Translation and Wes Anderson's Darjeeling Limited. And there's this scene in Darjeeling Limited where this kid just passed away. These brothers are going to this funeral and they're all wearing white and it's a tracking shot and the music's playing and it's just this perfect moment in cinema. And I remember being in the theater and it was like, one of those light bulbs went off like in a cartoon and I was like, "Oh, this is how I combine everything I love. This is how I combine music with art direction, with fashion, with storytelling." Everyone in this theater is feeling something on a deep level, even if they're not consciously aware of it, even if it's subconscious. And I was like, this is powerful, and this is what I want to do. Um, I think I was 25, 26 when I had that revelation, and I decided I needed to move to New York because at the time, there was really no film stuff here in Colorado, and that was the beginning of what ended up being a very, very long journey into figuring out how to actually do this.
Well, what's fascinating to me is this, and I'm going to give you a stat. The reason I'm doing what I do now, coaching executives, I run peer advisory groups, and I love speaking about teamwork and leadership and those things. But the reason I got into all this was I read a stat that 70% of Americans are disengaged at work. Okay, that bothered me greatly. That most people aren't living in their purpose and passion every day. What's fascinating about you is you had a pretty good job. You were doing some stuff that you enjoyed and everything else. But then you said, you know what? My real purpose and passion is over here in this filmmaking stuff. We'll get into that here in a minute. The question I have for you, Taylor, is this. What gave you the guts to make that transition, from working that job you were talking about, the Denver Art Museum, that you produced that chess game and all that kind of stuff, very fascinating stuff, by the way, to do this film stuff and start this film stuff wasn't a guarantee for you, but
It
you
never
had
still
you had
isn't.
yeah, but you
Yeah.
had the guts and you had the grit to do that. What do you think that was? What do you think gave you that push to do that?
That's a really great question because it was a crazy thing to do to move to New York
Yeah,
with no training.
it's an amazing story.
I don't come from a wealthy family. I had no, net to catch me. Um, I think some people, this might sound cheesy, just have like a calling in life. And I felt that I was capable of doing great things with my life. And so I just always wanted, we grew up with some hardships and I didn't want that to be my story. Um, a lot of it was just a lot of faith that things were possible. And I always had this, I'm a dreamer. I always had this dream and I was like, you'll just figure out how to get there. And I'm also a really curious person. I think it's important to be curious about what's next and what's around the corner and not get too comfortable. Um, and always knew that a typical 9 to 5 job wouldn't work for me. And I would actually stem that back to being homeschooled because create learning for me was just a part of life. It wasn't like you go to school to learn and then you come back to life. Learning was infused into my everyday life. So when like a lot of people got out of high school and college and they stopped reading and stopped really wanting to learn anymore, I was like confused. I'm like, reading is like joy to me, it's like part of life. And so I think a lot of it was just being raised with like a different in a different sort of system. Um, and I've I mean, I read books on the brain and motivation and self-help, the way that diet and exercise comes in. Like there's all these little things, but when I was younger, it was just pure insanity. It was like I was like, if I fail, then what's the worst that can happen?
There you go. There you go. You hit it. You hit it because you know how many people out there are in the same situation that you were in at 27, wondering if they should make that transition and go for it and all that stuff. And there's people out there just keep waiting. Should I do it? Should I do it? Should I do it? And what you just said is what they need to hear.
You know, this is a quote that my partner and I say to each other frequently, and it's, we just have this one precious life as what we know of. And I think we take that for granted sometimes. And
Hmm.
I don't know why at a very young age, I was just very aware, maybe because of the hardships I had seen other people experience, but I was like, we get one chance at this. And I don't want to be in my 80s and look back and have regrets, you know?
That's my job as a coach is to make sure the people that I coach and lead don't have regret. I call it fear regret. I actually have a hat that says fear regret
Mhm.
because I'll give you a story, and I've said this on my podcast, so people are probably getting tired of me saying it, but I love this story. My dad's 90 now. When he was about 84, I took him to see his lifelong friend. They've been friends since kindergarten, grew up in Denver, and his friend was in a nursing home. It was his last days. He wasn't doing well. And couldn't get out of bed and so forth. And he looked at my dad and he said, "I just wish I could fly again." Well, this guy was a commercial airline pilot. That was his career, and he loved it. And he was 84 on his deathbed, and he said, "I just wish I could fly again." And it just hit me. It's like, when I'm 84, am I going to say, "I just wish I could coach again? I
Hmm.
just wish I could help another business person again. I just wish I could run another peer advisory group again. I just wish I could go speak one more time to help inspire people." And I obviously say, yes, I'll be able to say that. Most people, 7 out of 10 can't
Yeah.
say that. You can, Taylor. You can say that.
Mhm.
And you said, what's the worst thing can happen? Right? The worst thing that can happen is you're not going to have regret either way because you went for it.
Yeah.
Just a fascinating story. Now, you said you had to overcome some hurdles and some adversity. What were some of those hurdles and adversities that you had to overcome?
Well, at a young age, we didn't grow up. We didn't have a lot of money growing up. After 9/11, a lot of small businesses. My dad ran a small business and things were really tough. We lost our house, like, all kinds of things. Now I'm like the thought of feeding six children and putting them all through braces and, all the things like that was a lot. And so there was a lot of stuff there. And so that was part of why I dropped out of high school and got a GED and I went to hair school at 17 because I was like, I know I have to make my own way. I know there isn't money for college. So I'm going to learn a trade. And that actually was probably one of the smartest things I ever did because I was able to take it with me anywhere. That's how what my first job when I moved to New York, I was able to go and do that. But New York is an intense place to
Oh,
live,
yeah, yeah.
intense place to survive, especially if you don't have a trust fund and you don't have, all that coming through. And so, um, yeah, I mean, there was adversity around every corner. It's really interesting, like talking about being comfortable because I was a hairstylist. I was really good at it. I made a lot of money and I still wanted to be a filmmaker. And it was the golden handcuffs, because I was like, I can see the trajectory here. I can go and I could travel the world. I could do this. I could raise my prices. I could just keep doing this thing. But I knew I was unhappy, and I was kind of like I wasn't growing, and I was kind of dying inside a little bit. And I made the choice to stopped that. I actually moved to Istanbul, Turkey for a little while,
Wow.
as the assistant to a director named Bahman Gabati, who's like a very famous Iranian director. I actually met him because Judah and my sister Jordan were extras on A Wolf of Wall Street with Martin Scorsese. And Bahman was there and saw Judah and Jordan. He was like, "Who are these two?" And long story short, we're like lifelong family friends now. And so I went there for a while and I quit my hairstyling job. I got rid of my apartment and I moved to Istanbul. And that was a crazy experience. Ended up coming back and I just started assisting in the film world, which, these are not high paying jobs. These are like,
Yeah.
and I think a lot of kids nowadays, they want, I mean, I see this with my production company. They want to just have the big job title like right away. And I'm like, I interned. My first movie job, I wasn't paid.
Yeah.
Like I
Yeah.
literally worked 12 to 14 hours a day in the art department like crazy. And it was just to get the experience and get it on my resume. And you know what? That was my first IMDb credit. And then it started to go from there. But I assisted in every department because I wanted to understand. I was like, if I'm going to be a director, I want to understand what every single person that is going to be working under me, what their job is like, you
There's
know?
that keep learning, growing. Keep learning,
You
keep
have
learning,
to
keep
all the
learning.
time. And I mean, especially in this day and age, like
Right.
technology, everything's growing so fast. I mean, I had meetings today with my company I just launched about how we stay current on social media. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel so old. Like I have no idea like what is going on. But you have to stay. I go back to the thing of just staying curious and
Yeah.
staying hungry. And the curiosity, I think, is a good term for it because
Love
then
it.
um it's not stressful or heavy. It's exciting.
Hmm.
You know what
Hmm.
I mean?
And I like to use the word intriguing. One of the reasons I do this podcast because every guest I've ever had on it is so intriguing because of your story, right? I mean, your story just keeps getting better. You move to New York, you meet this guy or this person, and you move to Turkey, and you do all this. You're just not afraid to take that chance and take that leap. And I just look up to you so much for that. And now you're into your own thing.
Yeah.
Now you're into your own production company. What's that like to run your own production company? I mean, you've come a long ways, really in a short period of time. You're still very, very young.
Thank you.
You've
It
come a
felt like
long,
it took forever.
but it hasn't.
It was
But
10 years,
but
you
you
know?
were okay to take the knocks as long as you kept learning.
Yeah, and there were risks, like now I actually do some mentorship for younger people and like I had a girl recently who wanted to be a screenwriter and she was like, "Well, I just don't want to be like in LA waitressing, while I'm trying to get my screenplays out." And I was like, "Then you might want to pick a different job."
Yeah, yeah,
Because I can't even tell you how many things I've had to do to support what I'm now doing and in order to make it sustainable, you can't have pride, there's no job too low. You have to really be willing to like get dirty with it. And the production company, it's interesting. It sort of happened naturally. So I had a feature film that I had written. I started writing it in 2018 because I realized that as a first-time female director, no one was just going to hand me a project. And I was like, I need to write something that is within a certain budget range, that I can, you know, raise the money perhaps, and that no one else could direct but me. And so I spent about 4 years writing this movie.
that's so awesome.
It was a tough thing figuring out how to write a feature film. It's not an easy thing. And then, it's interesting. The pandemic happened, and I was here in Colorado for a while because I had been in New York, and all these doors started opening up. I met the film incentive here in Colorado. We worked with the film organization here, and they were like, you should raise the money and shoot this movie in Colorado. And I was like, okay, okay. I was like, I don't really know. Like most people, you go through a different production company and they figure out how to finance your film and they figure out how to do everything. Well, I'll be honest with you, most of my friends that are waiting for that path are still waiting for their
Yeah,
movie to be made.
right.
So I decided to start my own company, raise the funds myself,
You're amazing.
and figure out how to do it. I had literally, I'm not kidding you, in 2020, I had no idea how to do any of this. And I would just get anyone on the phone that would talk to me. Anyone that I knew that had made a feature film that was in the industry, I was like, can I have an hour of your time? Can I have 10 minutes of your time? And you just start gleaning different pieces of advice from each person. You have to, I mean, I didn't even know how to set up the business structure for the LLC and the waterfall of the investments and all this stuff. And I, I think people think that you're supposed to know how to do it before you do it. And
Yeah.
it's just not true. Nobody ever knows what they're doing before they do it. Even Martin Scorsese, who's one of the greatest directors of all time, is like, every movie, I don't know what I'm doing because every situation is different. So I just was like, you know what it is? It's having trust in yourself that you can handle what will come when it comes because I don't have the answers, but I'll figure it out as I go. And so I started that company. We shot my movie the end of 2022 into 2023. There's been obstacle after obstacle. There was COVID, a SAG strike. The industry's totally changed, all this stuff. But in the process of that, my producing partner and I, we just realized that we wanted to make a home for all of these stories and that we also wanted to help young people figure out how to tell their stories so that the 10, 12 years it took for me figuring it out all myself, because no one will tell you how it's done, that we can, educate people and help them figure out how, you go to film school, they don't teach you how to start a business. They don't teach you how to fundraise for $1 million movie. None of that is taught really. So it's like all of this is this mystery that no one wants to talk about. And so yeah, now we have this umbrella company. We, have it's a home for my projects. I have a new narrative feature that I'm working on, and then a doc series. And then we're also producing for other people as well. And we do short projects, commercials, music videos, that sort of thing. And um, it's funny, we launched it. We've technically been working as a company for a year, but we officially launched it last month, and it's really exciting.
How do you overcome adversity? You've mentioned a lot of adversity. You've mentioned a lot of I didn't know what I was doing. You mentioned I had to learn on the go. I you know I didn't have the money to start this. I did all these different things that were there.
Yeah.
You know, I life is not a marathon. There's a saying out there, life's a marathon.
Mhm.
Life's not a marathon, it's a steeplechase.
Yeah, it sure is.
A steeplechase is in track where it's like a marathon, but you have hurdles, and one of the hurdles you jump over and jump into water and come out and you have to keep running, and that's what life's about. You've mentioned so many hurdles that you've had to overcome. Back to when your dad had a hard time with his business when the 9/11 hit, all the way back to there. You guys lost your house and all these different things that have happened in your life. Taylor, tell us, what's your secret to overcoming adversity and to keep going, to keep that grit going, and to believe that you can do it?
Well, I had a really big epiphany when we were developing raising the money for the feature film because we had to push the movie 3 times because we
Okay.
didn't have the funding yet. And I'm not gonna lie, that's really discouraging. It is. I mean, there was a moment, I'm serious. I was driving and I was like, I'm done. I'm giving up. I can say I tried my best. Um, and I don't know what it was, but I remember driving and there was this little spurt of energy, and I was like, I'm not quite done yet. But what I will say is I used to look at the problems that would arise and they would really stress me out. And I would get, overwhelmed and crazy. And then I realized that filmmaking, all it is problems every day. Every day, all it is a problem to solve. And actually, life is kind of like that. Every day, there are situations where we have to figure them out. And I was like, if I'm going to hate and be stressed about solving problems every day, then I need to do something else with my life because I didn't work this is not an easy job. I didn't work this hard to hate what I'm doing. And I was like, what if I just reframe it? What if I reframe it and just life is problems to solve? You know? Around every corner, there is something else that we have to figure out. And if I can just open myself up and accept that that's just life, as a director, as a movie producer, literally I wake up every day, and my team is on the East Coast, so I wake up to it, and it's just problems all day long. And so I had to change the way I looked at that. And so it's like rather than looking at that as a negative thing, looking at that as what's possible here. You know,
It's
where are the
amazing.
possibilities in this? And I think there's also something to be said about feeling your feelings and like when things don't work out and there's disappointment, to like let yourself be bummed out for a minute and be like, this sucks. There was a SAG strike that was out of my control when we were trying to do our movie and we had to push our movie for 8 months. Out of my control. I don't think it's good to bury that stuff and pretend it's not happening. I think that's really unhealthy. I let myself feel the feelings. And once you let yourself really feel it, then you have like kind of a little breakthrough and you're like, all right, I felt that. I don't really want to sit in this anymore. Now my mind is open for what's possible. You know what I mean? But if
Yeah.
you just bury it, then that stuff is just taking up so much space, and all the room that you would be using for creative thinking of how to actually solve the problem is just all the space taken up with anger and resentment and sadness. You know what I mean? So feel those feelings, get through them, get it over with, and then move on, you know?
This is my 121st show podcast.
Wow.
And that's one of the most powerful things that anybody's ever said on my podcast. And I've had some amazing people on here. That is a master class in how to deal with adversity and then overcome adversity. Adversity equals opportunity if you do it right. And that's Taylor. Um, it's you're blowing me away. I knew this was going to be good. This is better than I thought. Okay, so I usually don't do this, but I have to read it a little bit. Um, you're fascinated by the power of music and storytelling, continually exploring the convergences between the two. Okay, you're
Mhm.
also interested in exploring the relationships between human beings, our relationships to ourselves, and how we affect each other and our communities. Now, I'm going to ask you about that, but I wanted to say something first to preface that. The outgoing Surgeon General from our last administration, when he was leaving, he gave a prescription for America. And his prescription for America was we need more community.
Mhm.
We need to put our phones down. We need to get out and meet our neighbors, have block parties, have more community functions, and get to know each other on a personal level, not on an electronic level, basically.
Mhm.
That's exactly what I just read is what you're trying to do.
Mhm.
Why is that so important to you?
Oh, it's everything. I mean, I think I think as human beings, we all have like our core values. And for me, bringing people together in community is the point of this existence. And I think it's also important for like our health and our well-being. You know, so in 2000, was it 18, 17? I lost a dear friend to alcohol addiction, and it's
Oh,
actually was, and then my partner also lost someone. It was in the same month. And it was why I started writing my movie, because addiction is something that kind of happens a lot in the artistic world, and it's people feel alone and they feel isolated. But when you go to the bar, you have your friends. And I had kind of quit drinking, and it was a really lonely thing when you don't have that community of people where you can just go and be together. Um, and the my partner's friend who had passed away was a music producer, and we went to all these benefit concerts after he passed away, and it was people playing his music live in a room together. And it was like going to church. It was a spiritual experience. And there was no religious, these were just in venues in New York City and
mhm.
LA and all over the country. And I was like, there's something powerful here. There is something happening. There's a catharsis and a healing happening where we're all coming together with music. Well, I ended up studying this actually. There's an author, I'm forgetting his
Um,
name right now. He wrote The Power of Awe, and I heard him on a podcast called On.
it's no, it's John O'Leary.
Okay, and
I've
basically,
had him on my podcast.
have you? Okay,
Yeah.
so he talks about the way that they can scientifically prove now
Hmm.
When people come together in a community
Hmm.
to listen to music, their hormone levels align.
Hmm.
There's something scientific. We are connecting together. When I heard that, it was like everything that I had believed because I grew up going to music and going to concerts, and I just saw what happened to people when we were in community like that. And similar things happens with film. When people come together and they watch things. I mean, we did the premiere of my film in the fall, and it was 400 people in a room, and I could physically feel no one was on their phones. Everyone's hearts were open, and it was really powerful. And I think that is what is amazing about storytelling. Storytelling has this ability to connect things and ideas and people that would never normally be connected. And I think now more than ever, we need to remember what we have in common with each other, in our humanity. And, George Lucas, the famous Star Wars director, he once said that if you can get people invested into a story, you can open them up to ideas and concepts that they never normally would be open to because they are identifying with the characters.
Yeah.
And that always really struck me. And so I think, and people have been telling stories about each other around a fire since the beginning of time. So
Hmm.
I think it's just one of the most amazing and beautiful and wonderful things you can give to the world.
Well, and be honest with you, that's exactly why I do this, is so people can connect with the person I'm having on my podcast.
Yeah.
And you know how many people are connecting with you today? I have to ask you this question. You said our relationships to ourselves.
Oh, yeah.
How important is that, Taylor? I've never really thought of it that way. I know the relationships between human beings, exploring those things and exploring how we affect each other and our communities. How important is it to really understand a relationship with ourself?
Um, it's huge. Are you familiar with the nonviolent communication?
Uh-uh.
If I could buy everyone a book, it would be this book. It's now called like Compassion Communication. It's the author passed away, but they have centers all over the world now. And I used to go to them in New York. The concept is that we are all responsible for our own needs. And if we're feeling anger, threatened, sadness, it's not actually what the other person is doing. It's that our need for respect isn't being met, our need for love, our need for connection. And so, what it asks you to do is take like radical responsibility for what you feel in a moment. And rather than projecting it on everyone else, like, you did this to me, you don't understand me, blah, blah, it's like, my need for support is really not being met in this moment. And what you're doing is you're immediately being vulnerable and you're immediately offering an invitation and a bridge to actually have communication with someone. And the reason I bring this up is because when I read this book and started doing this program, it was like, you have to really sit with who you are and what you need and what you want and be present with yourself and take responsibility for what you really feel. And it's emotional intelligence is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah,
And how am I supposed to go out into the world and expect everyone else to know what I need and what I want and how I am? It's such an arrogant thing to do, you know? Um, but I mean, I practice transcendental meditation and all kinds of things because I think sitting with ourselves and understanding who we are is the way that we take responsibility for our lives on this planet so that we can go out into the world and be better people, and this whole concept of your podcast of like being the best that we can be, I think that's how we serve the world the best,
yeah,
is thriving and living lives with joy and excitement for what we are doing, that's how we change the world. So having a relationship with yourself is so important. And it's really hard because now we're all on these devices all the time. And it's just sucking out any individuality in any of ourselves. And it's like, just sit with yourself. Who are you? What do you really want? And, I think a lot of people don't go after what they want because they don't even know what it is,
yeah.
you know?
So you just made me think a little bit when you were saying that, most of us don't know ourselves, do we? Because we don't spend the time to try to figure ourselves out.
Well, I think a lot of us we get so busy and we don't think we're like, well, what's the gain? Why spend time with myself? And it's like, because it's the most important thing you could do. Really, at the end of the day, the only thing you have is yourself.
Yeah.
And I have found that my relationships, my partnerships, my business partnerships, I mean, when you practice this nonviolent communication in your business relationships, it is wild what happens because you set the table for real communication and things can grow and expand. I mean, I don't think I would be where I would at with my company right now if we weren't able to really have those tough conversations, but do them in love, you know? There's something really powerful about being the first person to be really vulnerable and say what
Especially
you,
as the leader.
especially as the leader. And that was
Sorry, I
something.
cut you off, but I had to say it.
No, no, not at all. I think, gosh, if we had more leaders like that, I think personally, the most courageous, the most brave people are the ones that are willing to like come first and really say what they need and have a strong sense of self and know who they are.
It's pretty awesome. Where are you at now? You had that film. You're
Mhm.
doing some other work and stuff. Where are you at now with all this, Taylor? What a journey this has been for such a young person, and your insights are just unbelievable. Where are you at? I mean, are you happy? Are you mentioned joyful? Are you at peace? You know that obstacles are going to come every day. You get on your phone call or your Zoom call in the morning with your East Coast people, and you just know that here it comes. Here it comes. Where are you at?
You know, it's funny. In some ways, I feel like things have just begun with my career because we've all these seeds have been planted and there's finally a foundation and we're just now starting to like really, I'm writing my next film and I feel like I finally understand how to do it. Like I have all this wisdom that I've learned along the way. But, I want to go back to the joy thing because, there's this idea in our culture of manifestation and everyone is so hip on, how do you manifest this perfect life? And I think what really shifted for me was when I started really appreciating the moment that I was in. And there's this little indie film that has a quote in it that says, "Yes, thank you, more, please." And this became my motto in my life to the point where my siblings for my 40th birthday made a little golden necklace that says, "Yes, thank you, more, please." I'm not wearing it right now, it's upstairs, but the idea is when you look at your life, rather than always looking into some future that doesn't exist yet. Like right now, I would be like, gosh, I'm so grateful that I am doing this podcast, that I'm in this home, I have this delicious iced tea. And you say, yes, thank you, and more of this. Yes, thank you, more, please. And I think my life really started turning around when I stopped trying to always be somewhere that I wasn't in the future. Because honestly, that could go on forever. It's like no matter what, you'll never be satisfied, you know? But to just really take a moment, I wake up every morning and I mean, as cheesy as it sounds, I literally, it just, I'm like, man, I'm so grateful for this bed, this night of sleep, my siblings, my family, my partner. And that's how I kind of do my whole day. And I really believe that the wonderful things have grown from a place not of lack and not enough, but from a place of what I do have currently in our lives because I think we don't pay enough attention appreciating the people and the things that we have like right now. And we grow from there rather than growing from some idea out here that doesn't even exist, you know?
Yeah,
So, yeah.
powerful. What's your next project you're doing?
Um, I don't know how much I can talk about it yet, but I have the rights to tell a historical story. And we're in the process of doing a documentary series about it. And then I'm also writing a narrative film. And here's what I'll say. The work and the fear never ends.
Wow.
Trying to write my next movie right now, I can't even tell you how hard it is. I mean, I will do anything to distract myself from it. I think the other thing is that people think they're going to arrive at a place that it's like, well, I'm going to get up that one mountain and then it's going to be easy. And it's like, it is
Yeah.
not like that. Once you get to that one mountain, there's just it's actually a bigger mountain. Like writing this next movie, it's more ambitious. It's going to cost more money. The industry's in a crazy place. Like there's always things. So I think what you do is you build up endurance, kind of like an athlete,
Yeah.
and you train yourself to be like, all right, I know I have the capability to do this now. I know I have the strength to do this. I trust myself a little bit more. And every time you take a risk and you push yourself a little harder, that faith in yourself grows just a little bit. But the fear does not go away. The hardships and the struggles do not go away. If anything, they just get bigger and more scary, you know?
So I have to ask, I'm writing this down. Fear. You said work and fear never go away.
Mhm.
What a great statement that is. How do you keep going then? You know, I think this, I always tell people fear's always there. It's natural, right? But we outwork fear. And it's
Yeah.
kind of what you just said. You outwork fear, and every time you take that step and keep outworking it, your confidence beats fear. And your faith in yourself beats fear because of the confidence that you build up because you keep taking those steps. You think about all the little steps that you've had to take where you could have said, I'm not taking that step anymore. I'm done. I'm going to go back and do hair.
Well, you know what? I love that you said little steps because I think that people mistakenly think that change comes from big leaps and that you make these huge changes and it's just like a big leap. And yeah, occasionally that's necessary. But I find the tiny day to day, it's like what we say in my family, brick by brick, brick by brick. Those little changes are the ones that really make a significance. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with like neuroplasticity or like the brain, they talk about this now. It's like you have these pathways. You don't just leap over and you have a different pathway. It's slowly you rewire the brain to go another way. And that is so exciting and so incredible to know that we can do that with the brain. But it's the daily tiny habits of showing up. That's the stuff that really creates change, not the big, you know, it's like, cool, you quit your job and you're gonna do another thing. Well, what are the tiny little steps you're gonna do every single day? I mean, I work for myself. I have
Yeah.
no boss. I
Yeah.
have no one ever telling me to show up to do my work. I have to just do it. And that is just little tiny, I mean, I actually have I have this little 30-minute hourglass that my sister bought me. And I just flip it and I'll be like, if just for 30 minutes, I just focus on this one thing. 30 minutes, I'm just going to write because it's so hard to focus and like get yourself to really do the thing, you know? But if I just do it for 30 minutes and then cut to it's been 2 hours and I've done it, you know what I mean? But just giving yourself those little bite-size, tiny, reasonable expectations for yourself, you're not going to run a marathon the first day, you know? It's impossible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, just, just gold. How you're helping people today. Three questions. I wrote a book, Taylor. It's called The Three Ps: Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion.
Hmm.
And it was based off of that 70% of Americans are disengaged because I believe that 7 out of 10 people driving to work today have no purpose to go there. And I think you find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself. So what's your purpose? What's your purpose in life?
Well, I think that goes back to that statement that you read from my bio on my website, and it's to bring people together, to open people's hearts. I think that I want to live in a world where people are more open-hearted. Um, and I try to do the best I can in my life to live open-hearted. Obviously, we're imperfect human beings, but my purpose is the belief that people can change and that if we are more educated about ourselves, we will. And so I keep going. And I love that you say purpose first because I don't think that I would have the motivation every day to get up and do this and to be self-motivated if my purpose wasn't so strong.
Hmm.
And my purpose is that I believe in people and I
Hmm.
believe in our ability to love each other. And I do my best to make art that comes from that place.
Well, and you said it earlier, and I wanted to touch on it then, but I wanted to wait. You were talking about 30 people watching a movie, and what it did to those 30 people for those 2 hours in that room who were watching that movie, either subconsciously or subconsciously, and what that was doing to those people, how it was connecting them, how it was making them feel good, and all those things. What a deep purpose you have for making films and doing what you do. Because you're giving somebody 2 hours where they can get to know themselves better, get to know each other better, get out there and just relax and have a different experience for 2 hours. It's going to make their life better. That's why you get up every day, because you love being able to give people that experience, to be able to connect people, to help them understand each other, understand themselves better, and so forth. Your purpose is so driven in what you do. It's amazing how you've explained this. It's awesome. Now I switch over. I skip over perspective, and I'll tell you why in a second. But what's your passion? What do you love to do, Taylor?
Ooh, I love music. I love music so much. I've been, I remember I got grounded once because I snuck out to see a concert downtown when I was 16, late at night, and my dad caught me. Um, I, music does bring people together, but there's something about music that is this non-verbal, non-judgmental, anyone from anywhere can understand it, and it just hits me. And my ideas, like when I write, I mean, my film had a lot of music in it. I wrote the music into the film, but I would go on these long walks when I lived in Brooklyn, and just certain music would I would see things. I would see pictures in my head, and I'd be like, "Oh, this hits that, this hits that." And I mean, I was at Red Rocks last night. Seeing friends of mine were in town playing at Red Rocks, and I went to go see them. And so that's sort of probably just one of my passions. And I love my family so much. My family and friends, my siblings and I are all very close. My partner is a musician, and um, yeah,
It's pretty awesome. So
yeah.
now here's what I say. If I could draw a circle and put your purpose and passion inside that circle,
Hmm.
okay, there's things that come at that circle every day trying to take you out of your purpose and passion. When you are able to live in that purpose and passion, how do you feel?
Oh, it's how do I explain it? You feel integrated, you feel like you have access to all parts of yourself and that
Mhm.
there's like a center, and sometimes you have to fall off of that to find your way back to it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? And I mean, I had a whole year after we made the movie where we couldn't put it out, where I was just like in a rough spot. I
Right.
was still finding my way back, but it was like a good year of just like, what the hell am I doing with my
Mhm.
life, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
So, it's like don't get scared when you do get pulled out because you'll find your way back. But when you are in that place, um, I think that's when you find a lot of joy too.
Peace and joy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So the monks have a saying, Taylor. Their saying is you protect your purpose, so your purpose protects you.
Oh,
So
that's good.
you have that circle, and I tell people to draw a big, thicker line around that circle. And then I tell them to draw arrows coming at that circle. And that thicker line represents memory foam. And when
Hmm.
those arrows come at us to try to take us out of our purpose, and you mentioned a lot of arrows today, right? All the adversity, all the struggles, all the second guessing, all the fear, all that stuff. Those are all arrows trying to take us out. You mentioned one time you're driving down the street saying, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. You know how many people on a daily basis say that?
Mhm.
Right? And that's when they're outside their purpose and their purpose isn't protecting them.
Mhm.
So that memory foam makes those arrows come and stick. We can learn, grow, and progress from them. Okay, but they're not going to beat us. And that's what our perspective is. Our perspective is the glue that holds that all together. So
Mhm.
what would you say your perspective on life is? Like when you said, I'm done with this, I can't do this anymore. There's something that you fall back onto that kind of gets you back on track and back in your purpose. What would that perspective on life be? It's kind of a
Well,
long-winded question there, buddy.
yeah,
Sorry.
no. I mean, for better or for worse, I'm an optimist. So I tend
Okay.
to lean towards what is possible. But but now that's a little more educated and like going back to the neuroplasticity and the way the brain works, I know now that we can change and move things and that change is possible and that there's always something new available to us. And so I always knew that on like a fundamental level. And I think that's what kept me going is that perspective. But now that I've been like, the science is so advanced now of like the way we actually can. I mean, my brother Judah sent me a podcast recently about a a scientist at MIT like literally explaining the way the brain works. And so it's like my perspective is, and it always has been, that we can change, that nothing is fixed. It's
Yeah.
always moving. Every day, the sun's going to come up again tomorrow and it's going to be a new day, and sometimes if it's been a bad day, just let it be a bad day and try again tomorrow. It's okay. And so my perspective I think would be that it is always changing, and that's why when things are really crazy, which they are all the time, I know that it's not permanent. And that comes with age also. I don't
Yeah.
know that I had that as much when I was in my 20s and early 30s. Like I've seen it in action a lot more now, which is why I think people think you can only do great things when you're young. And I just want to really call that out because it is not true. And I think so many people by the time they hit my age and 40s, 50s, whatever, they're like, well, it's too late for me. I can't change my life. It's already done. And that just isn't true. At any point of your life, you can turn things around and take risks. And I think that sometimes we have more value and more things to say because we have the wisdom of all those
Mhm.
years of experience. So it's not, when your youth is what it is, but that's not the only time that you can take risks or do bold things.
No, it's awesome. My daughter works for a neurotherapy place.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that does that rewiring. It's pretty amazing.
Coolest thing.
I did it for sleeping, and I've
Wow.
never since I've done it, I've never slept deeper in my life.
Oh, we'll have to
It's
we'll have to
pretty crazy.
sidebar talk
Yeah.
about that. That's really
But
cool.
so I wanted to rehash something real quick. What was the book you had said for people to get?
Oh, it's called Nonviolent Communication by
Okay.
Marshall Rosenthal. It's an older book. I want to say it was written in like the 50s or the 60s. So he's passed away, but there is an entire, organization, and they've changed it now to, I believe it's compassionate communication. There's centers all over the world. And they just teach people how to communicate. I mean, I'll give you an example. I was having some trouble with one of my sisters. And so I went to a class to like learn how to do this. And I'll tell you, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. You had people from other countries trying to learn how to connect with their wives and partners, college students trying to connect with their other students. Like everyone in the room was just trying to figure out how to connect with the people that they cared about most,
Mhm.
all different walks of life. I mean, this was New York City. It was the coolest thing. And they give you a list of emotions and a list of needs. And you pick what the emotion is you're feeling and then what the need it could be related to is. And just that practice is like life changing.
I'm going to write that down. Um, and then my book, you mentioned it. I think it's the same one. It's called In Awe
Yeah.
by John Gordon.
Is it John
Um,
Gold?
I mean, not John Gordon. I'm sorry, John O'Leary.
Let me
John
see.
Gordon is who I just got certified by. He wrote The Energy Buzz, The Power of Positive Team, and The Power of Positive Leadership, which I highly recommend as well.
Oh, okay.
Life-changing books, and I can come and speak on those and stuff now. It's really kind of opened my life a little bit too to help people with those type of things. But John O'Leary wrote it. He wrote the book On Fire. He's the one he
Hmm.
blew himself up when he was 9 years old and was given a 0% chance to live. And now he's in his 40s and has 4 kids and married and all this stuff. But
Oh, wow.
he wrote this book called On Fire, and then he's now written a book called In Awe. And
Hmm.
I would suggest, just like you suggested your book, I would suggest everyone read In Awe.
Yeah.
It's a way to live your life and so much more happiness and
Hmm.
freedom. But thank you.
Yeah.
This has been awesome. And I wish you nothing but the best. I did want to ask you the film that you have put out,
Mhm.
what is that called so people can go watch it?
So it isn't. available yet. We're still doing the festival circuit, so it'll
Okay.
probably be sometime this fall, but it's called Lovers.
Okay.
Yeah. And you can
Okay.
find it on IMDb. We have a website and everything, but that should be out in the next few months.
And
So
it's already run some awards, right, at some of these festivals?
yeah, it's doing well. It's
Yeah.
doing,
Yeah.
yeah.
You're being humble right now, but it's won some awards. You're kicking butt on it.
Thank you. Thank
You're amazing. Thank you so much. Again, that's what this is about, is to help get people inspired, get people out there and going and know that you can do it too. Just think of all the adversity and so forth that Taylor's gone through in her life to get to where she's at now. And she brick by bricked it. She brick by bricked it. She kept taking that step. You're just an amazing person, and I thank you so much for coming on and helping and inspiring so many people today. And you can get on Taylor's website. She has a website. It's Taylor McFadden. And you can get on and kind of follow what's going on and what's going on and what their next production is and all that kind of stuff and so forth to support her and support her work. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much, Taylor.
Thank you so much for having me. This is a really lovely conversation.
Yeah, it's been awesome. I appreciate you all for listening. Please share this episode because everyone in the United States and in the world needs to hear Taylor's story and her words of wisdom and her inspiration. It will make your life better. So please share it. Please download it, whatever it is. I don't know how all that works, but just do it because it's going to help you. It's going to help your life. So thank you all again for listening. And like I tell you every week, please, please, please keep learning, growing, and progressing, and have a great day. Thank you so much.